know that Fowler is on vacation. Patty, are you ready? Okay. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Common Council meeting for July 14th, 2015. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Nelson.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Fowler. Markham.
Here.
Fernsler.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Sedlacek. Williams.
Present.
Let the record show we have a quorum. Next item is the pledge. Please stand. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion.
So moved, Alder Markham. Second, Hildebrand.
We have a first and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Hanson.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Fernsler.
Yes.
Hildebrand.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item 4, audience portion. Citizen comments must be recognized by the mayor or presiding officer and are limited to 3 minutes per person for those signed in and recognized by the chair. We encourage people to come and sign in and tell us what's on their mind. That's where you do the talking and we do the listening. And tonight we have one person who signed in, Carol O'Malley. Carol?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the mayor and the city council for giving me 3 minutes to say thank you. You all know that we're putting together the Family Fun Day on Saturday, the Touch a Truck. And between that and last week's Mill Street Festival, it's great that the city council is working with all of us downtown by closing off streets and by closing off parking lots and things to make this happen. I thought a little bit about this and realized that Plymouth is in the middle of a really great county in that we have world-renowned golf courses, we have world-renowned racetrack, world-renowned hotels, 5 diamond hotels, resorts, all the really great things. And I realized that sometimes Plymouth kind of stands back and let things come to us, and doing these events makes us a player. I know for myself, for my small business, during the wintertime, I have an average of 700 to 800 people walk in the door every week. Now with school out and the tourist season on, we run between 1,400 and 1,500 people a week. So they're all tourists. And even today I had people from Finland stop in because they'd been here 2 years ago. So I want to thank the council for giving the downtown, the DPA, the opportunity to put some events together, to working with Randy Schwer, who has some really fun ideas, but just to make Plymouth not just the sleepy, cute little town. I mean, it's great. We have a great art center for a town this size. I think Generations is a wonderful thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing it expand and grow in different ways. But it's nice to see the council working with the downtown to make us part of a bigger thing. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And I just want to extend an invitation for you to come on Saturday. I know that everyone doesn't have time. You can come and we've got snacks and food and water balloon fights and anything we want to do. And I'm extending a personal invitation to you to act as volunteers, because we always need volunteers. And I thought if you're really good, we'll let you touch a truck. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Words well spoken. Item 5. Approve extraterritorial certified survey map for John and Bonnie Miller, North 6764 North 67th. This was approved by the Plan Commission on July 9th. The chair will entertain a motion.
So moved to approve the extraterritorial survey. Second, Alder Hanson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Fernsler,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6, items removed from the consent agenda is not needed. Moving on to item 7, new business. 7A, approved purchase of an Altec DB37 demo backyard machine in the amount of $131,002 with funds from the 2015 Capital Budget Fund, noting that this equipment will be shared with the Keel Utilities, who will contribute $50,000 toward the purchase price. Tonight we have Jim Peterson from Electric Utility Operation Manager. Jim, won't you give us a summary, if you would, before we entertain a motion?
This piece of equipment that we're going to be sharing with Keel Utilities is an opportunity for both of us to get a piece of equipment that works, and because we know both of us can't use this piece of equipment every day. With this opportunity to work with them, they give us a chance for us to use it, them to use it, and it gets us to be able to use backyards for not only for trimming trees, but also for setting poles and setting pad mount transformers and stuff in the backyard, so we're not driving big trucks in the backyards. This equipment also, what's nice about it, it narrows down so it can get into a 3-foot area, and then it can expand once it gets into an area so that we can, for better traction, more stability in that piece of equipment. So, any other questions? Or?
Is it a track machine?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is a track equipment. It's a digger derrick, so, and it does have a bucket. So.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if we have any questions after we entertain a motion from the council.
Move to approve the purchase of the Altec DB37 demo backyard machine in the amount of $131,000.
With funds from the 2015 Capital Budget Fund, noting that Keel Utilities will also contribute $50,000 towards the purchase price.
Second, Alder Hanson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Williams,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Fernsler,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item B, announce mayoral appointment of Ron Nicholas to the Plan Commission to fill the unexpired term through May of 2017. Item C, I don't believe we can do item C. We don't have enough quorum to make that a viable vote. Is that not correct? So the chair will delete item C and ask that to go forward to the next council meeting. Technicality on the requirements of confirmation. Moving to item D, discussion and possible recommendation to staff regarding railroad crossings. I'll call on Council President Hanson to start the discussion on that.
Okay, thank you. A couple of weeks ago, we got from Administrator Jurgis a copy, and you should have a copy if you didn't bring one with you, that was distributed tonight. It says before the Office of the Commissioner of Railroads, and what it shows on here is that the 9 crossings that are going to be affected in Sheboygan County, and 7 of those crossings are dealing with Plymouth, 2 of the town of Plymouth and 5 of the city of Plymouth. And what the gist of the answer we got back from the Commissioner of Railroad was that they're going to put yield signs at all the crossings from the track east from Plymouth to Sheboygan Falls. And I I had some questions on that because I worry somewhat, and it's, you know, about the crossing that's by Highland Avenue, by the high school, and by Horizon, because they're gonna have a yield sign there, and the train is apparently gonna go only get 25 miles an hour, and it's only gonna go from 6 o'clock to midnight, but there's just gonna be yield signs there, and you know, working at the high school, I know there's kids that will leave the high school, practice or come to concerts, things like this, and they'll, without anything else there, I have a concern, and I guess that's what I'm bringing up tonight on it, somewhat on it. I did some looking at the North-South Railroad, and they have flashing lights, and maybe they're obsolete now or not, I'm not sure, but on Grove Street, Elizabeth Street, North Milwaukee Street, Thayer, Reed, and East Clifford Street, they have yellow, or they have the flashing lights on those particular streets. And this new track that's gonna go, and it's a, they're not gonna have anything but yield signs there, and I guess, that's, and I talked to Minister Jurgis, and, you know, he gave me some good, you know, information on it. How do we challenge, and I don't want to take on the railroad or that type of thing, but how do we get it so they might consider having some other type of crossing there, or do we pay for it ourselves, some other type of warnings there? And, you know, we may probably have to hire a consultant, because how could I, as, you know, speaking, how could I say, well, you're wrong, we need some type of warning system other than yield signs there? And so I guess that's why I brought it up, one of the reasons on it, and if you take a look at page 2 on here, that, you know, the findings, they basically state that we've investigated this, and we feel that warning signs at the 7 crossings on those streets are enough. So I guess.
Any other comments,
Yeah.
questions? Alderman Ferguson?
Living with the train coming down my backyard. There's been 2 trains in the last 2 weeks, and they toot their little horn, and there has been no trouble at all on Pleasant View. And I noticed that people, when they come up Pleasant View or down it, they slow down before they get to the track. I mean, there's plenty of room to see on each side. I don't know, Charlie. I think we should find out when these trains are going to come. If they're only going to come once a week, and it's during the daytime, as I understand it, it wouldn't be at night. Unless they've changed the rules, I understood it would be in the daytime.
I believe the mayor had told me that between 6 and midnight is they're going to run the trains.
They're once they get regular, they're gonna do this as a evening run, which will be dictated by how quickly they get here, because we're at the end of the line from Milwaukee. So evening, I think, can vary, but it certainly isn't daytime, 8 to 5. So we don't know what that's gonna be until they get regular. And so the indication was evening, and that's why I indicated, 6 to midnight. Maybe it's 4 to 10, who knows? That's what I was told, yeah.
Yeah, you don't even hear. I mean, they're within 30 feet of my back door, or 40 feet. And I got hell for putting stuff in the clothes dryer the other night. I said, look out the back, it's not the clothes dryer. What's the train doing?
Have to put a new whistle on that clothes dryer. like you do your teapot. Alderman Williams.
Charlie, or whoever might have the information, I do remember you, Mr. Mayor, saying that some of the flashers, some of the gates coming down, if I understood you correctly, are obsolete, that there's no option, there's no companies making some of that stuff. What options are you hoping to get there, Charlie?
Well,
I guess, some type of flashing light. I'm not sure what the opportunities are, I guess. I just wanted to bring it forward to see what, you know, and maybe I'm just the only one that's considering this. I did contact the high school office, and I talked to the assistant superintendent. His wife happens to live down in that particular area, and she said somebody's gonna be killed, you know, at the train tracks. But, you know, you can say that if you're not paying attention and et cetera on that, so.
Well, it's been years since we've had any kind of accidents like that, I believe, correct or incorrect? Have we had any?
We haven't had trains there for 35 years.
Okay, well, every once in a while I hear one, but it must not be going on that
No.
track.
No,
then.
it's not.
Okay,
It's on the
And
north-south.
my biggest concern is by the high school, by the Horizon, and students coming and going. And maybe you could say that the same way for Pleasantville, maybe you could say for South Milwaukee, Clifford Street, but, you know, and I, you know, maybe those signs are obsolete, but I guess I'm bringing it up.
well, you talk about, Mr. Mayor, that majority of the trains, when they eventually get everything settled, will be evening. Obviously,
I hear right now.
there you go. Okay, well, I hear them. I'm glad somebody else gets to hear them, and it wasn't just me.
Chad.
That come, you know, November, December, night is about 4 o'clock. You know, so that's from 4 o'clock during the winter months to midnight, or whatever is going to be in the dark. Judging by some of the cars that I hear go by and occasionally park in the lots and stuff, you can be a quarter mile away and hear the thumping of the music. And it probably would not be unusual that some teenagers attending high school may have the music turned up real high. So I understand some of your concerns on that, Charlie, but I really don't know what options we have on this. Are you thinking about filing a formal, complaint? What's the process?
Well, we had 20 days if we wanted to have a public hearing on it. But what would a public hearing do, I guess? I don't know. I guess I don't have an answer, but I have not investigated it. You know, in the recommendation to staff regarding the railroad crossing, do we want to have the staff look into this, or we just want to let it go for now and check in later, or I don't know. I just asked that question, I guess.
Alderman Hildebrand?
I think you're justified in that, especially the amount of immature drivers that are going up and down that road. You know, heading out of town or coming into town or after school. I think this should be looked into more.
Alderman Markham, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Charlie, I think it is a valid concern, and I think it is something that I would be concerned about, and I guess I don't know what I don't know about what our options are. And Chief Tauschek, do you have any thoughts in regards to that? You know, are you guys concerned about it?
Well, I sent emails to our contact from Wisconsin Southern, and he was very helpful. His response was that it's a decision made by the Commissioner of Railroad, and then there's that 20-day comment period. I think it's a legitimate concern for anybody in the city. Highland Avenue is a fairly high volume of traffic. Then you add 9 months or so out of the school year. High school students, young, inexperienced drivers, school events. Not only high school, but that road is used quite a bit. So I have some concern, I guess, between the two evils, a stop sign versus a yield sign. A stop sign, when I talked to the railroad, the guys that were building the railroad, there was a stop sign up a short time on South Street, and the cars would just slow down and look and go, and that was part of my comment to on one of my emails. So I thought I read in the report that there would also be some pavement markings, but I think that's just another form. Pavement markings are like yield signs and stop signs. They're only work as well as the person that comes across them follows them. I think in the ideal world we would have arms that would go down and lights flashing when a train approaches. You know, how we can get those, I think that would be something the city would have to look at. I would probably start with our contractor, Wisconsin Southern, as a resource, find out cost, but I think that would be something to at least look at and gather some costs. I'm not sure the criteria that the Commissioner of Railroad used to make these decisions. You know, as you travel farther east on the tracks, when you get out to Wool Road and such, I can see the, a low volume of traffic. I think Pleasant View is probably not far behind Highland Avenue along with South Street through the industry. And there's always a lot of traffic. I live up in that area. And I guess if you look at the big picture here, you have a road with a lot more traffic than you have on Elizabeth Street or Grove Street, and you have the old flashing signs there when the trains come through. But now you have a section of the City Road Railroad. Granted, it hasn't been here for 30 years or 25. One would think that if you look at it logically, that you would have flashing lights there long before you would have them on these existing roads. So I guess I think it would be in the city's best interest to look at some options and get some costs, and then once you have that information in front of you, do a little research on that, and then I think you can make a better decision.
Mr. Mayor, I have another thought. I think it's evident from other interactions we've had with some of the experts, they're not familiar with our community at all. And maybe there was a decision made here hastily, not even knowing that there was an elementary school and a high school very close to that crossing. I think it would just be very easy just to say you need yield signs, and maybe it just takes a note or a letter to explain a little further why the decision was made with a location so close to a school.
I guess I would probably suggest that we try to obtain some additional detail that went into, they do cite 2 investigations. OCR was one investigator and gave his report and conclusions, and then the railroad had their investigator and gave their conclusion. And I think we want to see those reports, what went into those, and see if, yes, they realized that there was a school there, there was traffic there, et cetera. And I think going from the information that they use to evaluate it and what those evaluations are, I think that might answer some of the unknowns that we're guessing at. And I mean, I can't imagine, first off, that they would look at each crossing, especially on Highland, and not recognize that there's ball diamonds in a school within a stone's throw. So I'm going to say they know that, but I don't know that they saw that. So I think it would be prudent to try and get a copy of those reports and see what the fact is. Number 8 comment says that if the railroad, the municipality, or any interested party, that's an individual, on page 5, which is where number 8 is, that they could certainly make inquiries. But I think we could ask our administrator to make that inquiry of the Commissioner of Railroads and see if we could obtain that report. I would note that our 20 days is basically up as we sit here in a technical sense. But I think that's good background information to have. Now, I would also add to that I wouldn't think we are prohibited from doing something more than yield signs on an agreement basis, possibly with the railroad, and we could certainly look into that. But as far as, the commissioner's office, they don't contact local officials or police. Chief, did he call you and say, meet me at the crossing and, talk to me about it? No, they never do.
Actually, the contacts from Wisconsin Southern that I sent several, a few emails back and forth on this issue, that it wasn't Wisconsin Southern's decision or the city's at all, rides on Commissioner Railroad.
Exactly. They do that investigation. They're in town and they're out of town unless you recognize them or see them physically standing there and analyze what they're doing. They never contact local people. That is strictly procedure on OCR. So from that standpoint, I think we can make some inquiries and then maybe continue the conversation. But nobody here had an opinion on it or the chance to put their 10 cents worth in, so, that I know of. Any other questions or comments? I think our administrator could simply do that from an interest perspective and see what we come up with. And I don't know if they'll share that with us.
Well, just a comment, I think a couple comments. One is, essentially what, the report says the consultant's report recommended crossbucks and stop signs at all 9 crossings. The OCR's investigator recommended crossbucks and yield signs at all 9 crossings. So the OCR went with the recommendation of his own staff investigator, and there's yield signs. So obviously there's at least one report, maybe 2 reports. I'm not sure what goes into the OCR's investigator, if there's an official report, I would guess. So there's two reports. But essentially, I guess what I'm hearing is that you'd like the city administrator to make an official open records request
That's
for
a good
these
reason.
documents.
Sure.
But I just realized that, we're going to be starting to go down the road of asking questions where there's no history on a track, that the signs are in law, meaning that it's law now that this is what's in place. And we also are trying to fight for the Milwaukee Street crossing to keep open, which is probably in the eyes of OCR and a lot of people more dangerous than this crossing, and we're asking for, maybe going to be asking for gates here, but yet we don't want gates at Milwaukee Street. So what I'm saying is it's an interesting discussion and dilemma that I guess that certainly staff can pursue, but I think that, that's going to raise some question marks. But at the end of the day, what I would say is, if we do get the reports and we share that with you, in terms of what our options are, what the process would be to get something there. I'm just going to tell you that I don't think that there's anybody on staff at the city, our police chief or director of public works or myself or our city attorney, even that, understands the process that would have to go through and what you'd have to document or do to try and get some sort of gates there and who would pay for that and all that. So the next step, I guess, would be, after reviewing the reports, is that if this is something the council wants to pursue, I would be finding out who would be a railroad crossing consultant and get a scope of services drafted and allocate some funds to that.
I think, just some comments, Brian. Can you just ask for it without having to file an open, I
Yeah.
think more,
What-
and then maybe come back
yeah.
to us and say, they told me no,
Polite
and then
way of
let's
asking.
take the next
Yeah.
step, rather than be
bas-
real formal about it.
Yeah, basically what I'm gonna say is, I think what I'm gonna say is basically that, we have the order and obviously it has that upon 20 days we could request a public hearing. We decided not to do that, but what we would like to understand is what went into that decision, and can
That's a
you
polite way of
share?
saying it.
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
share those reports? That's essentially what I can do. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's gonna be much different information than this, and ultimately, I think that if this is something that the city really wants to pursue, I'm telling you that we're gonna need to get a consultant on
yeah.
board.
Alderman Nelson?
Well, certainly, I'm not an expert on railroad safety, but in that situation, going 25 miles an hour, if the city even at some point could install just a flashing light that can be seen up on top of the hill and down in the valley as they approach should be adequate, not full-blown gates and everything. But I don't know if that's even possible that we could have such a device at those sites.
I think that that's where we can make some inquiries and figure out what options there are short of the full-blown whatever that is. And certainly if we did put, we all travel over the bridge north of Green Bay, and they've got the fog lights that flash if there's fog warning, slow down. Certainly, one would think that we could install at our cost some sort of flashing lights that could present some warning type of thing. And certainly the chief mentioned, and I observed just this last weekend driving around, additional street markings with the crossbar and a railroad symbol on the pavement. That again, city street, we can probably do what we want. You can't touch railroad property, but certainly there's some things we could do.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, it should be noted that, I don't know if Director Emick or someone else brought this up, is that the railroad did not put any conduit in at any of the crossing, which means they're not anticipating any
Correct.
sort of electronic devices of any sort. So now, if there were gates, now we're ripping up a crossing and installing conduit, and my gut tells me all those costs are going to be our costs. I would guess.
Bill Emick?
One thing Brian mentioned is if right now there's yield signs. If you start asking questions, they may say, well, we can make it a little safer and we'll put stop signs up. And, do we want stop signs? Because it would be safer and everyone would stop, and it would kind of take away the argument for, because they had stop signs. It sounded like one of the recommendations
Yeah,
was to put stop
South
signs.
Street had them
So,
on for a little
just to
while.
let you should think, if you're
careful
pursuing
what you
this,
ask for.
the answer might be, okay, we can make it safer. And I don't know if we want that. I know the police chief was concerned, and there was a concern about coming down that hill and having to stop, but. So, and then the other idea of putting a flashing light, I don't know if the railroad, they've got their standards. I don't know if you can put something that doesn't meet their standard. And I also know that the signals that we've been talking about putting on Milwaukee Street were around $260,000 range. And so those are the kind of numbers you're looking at. That had gates in the whole bit, if we're just talking so the costs are pretty high. And with this inquiry and concern, if you throw it up there, they may come up with stop signs, which is just.
At that point, as a law enforcement, that's another job that, okay, are you going to put a man in 5 intersections and ticket everybody that doesn't stop because you now have a stop sign?
We'll address problem areas, but you know as well as I do, we're not gonna have enough people to put on every
Exactly.
intersection. They get to be like nuisance stop signs, similar to some intersections years ago where the easiest thing was to put up 4-way stop signs. I think former Chief Davis and Director Emick went down Madison, and you had a 2 or 3 day class on that subject alone. Nuisance stop signs, they really don't do any good. People slow down, get in the habit, and they slow and go.
They call those,
Railroad people told me that on South Street, the guys that were building it. Within a half a day, people were doing it.
they call those Chicago stops. Alderman Hanson.
Well, I guess when the railroads decided to come here, I had the assumption that they're gonna be better partners with us and tell us, what the particular cost is, and I didn't, I brought this up just to generate discussion, not sure where it would go with it, but if they had probably no intention of having lights there, if they put the tracks there, and we get this report after they've got the crossings done, and they didn't put the conduit there, so they probably had this report maybe done before, I just thought they were gonna be better partners when we had particular meetings here and saying that, discuss the silent crossings and things like this, but they can probably do what they wanna do, I guess, and that's
I think.
very frustrating to me.
I think Alderman Hanson, the report indicated that OCR made this determination according to, as the chief said, their standards. And Wisconsin Southern doesn't dictate those standards, and we don't dictate those standards. Those standards are not only Wisconsin statewide, but they're nationwide. So if you want to change something, you gotta go to Washington, is my answer.
I don't agree with that.
And
Alderman
they
Nelson.
probably are based on many, many experiences and years, so maybe it is totally safe. I mean, there's always some risk at anything, but, maybe it's 1 in a million there, who knows, I don't know. But obviously, they have studies somewhere to tell them where there are risks.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.